Welcome back to the Buffalo Reformed Podcast. My name's Aaron, pastor of Covenant Reformed Church, currently meeting in Warsaw, New York. And I know we usually have long-form interviews, about an hour or so long, and we post them once a month, usually the second Monday of every month. And I thought when I feel the need to write an article, usually write an article and just post it maybe on the Covenant Reformed Church Substack or on the Buffalo Reformed Podcast Substack, depending on the topic. But what I have decided is I'm going to try to do more videos, shorter videos, of the surrounding the things that I would typically write a Substack article about. What I want to talk about in this episode is the problem of social media and of clips. And I recognize the irony of me creating a video and adding another podcast to the plethora of podcasts that are already out there, and writing articles on a social media platform, Substack, which is already filled with people who are writing and who are filling up that space with their rhetoric and their ideas. And some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them are just in the middle of plain and boring. You've got the whole spectrum of things. So why in the world am I doing this? And the reason is twofold. One, the purpose of the podcast is to try and give us a space to discuss all the things that we list in our tagline with people in our own community: theology, politics, education, anything. We want to have those conversations, and we want to start thinking a little bit more ecumenically. We want to start thinking about our brothers and sisters that we wouldn't typically have space for in our life. We're trying to create a space where we can invite people in and have conversations, and we'd like it to be mainly focused on our community, so the Buffalo region. And so that's number one. But then number two, we can't address everything on Sunday morning with our sermons, or even in conversation. And so if we keep getting the same questions from people or the same suggestions, then this is the medium that we have chosen for communicating those things to our community. We recognize that the majority of the people that listen to this podcast or that read our articles are going to be members of our church. And so that's primarily who we're doing this for. It's for their benefit. And it's also for our benefit, because as I prepare to present something, or as I'm working through something in writing, generally that is actually helping me synthesize my thoughts, bring everything together into a cohesive unit, and then be able to present it in a manner that is edifying. All those things are mutually beneficial for the hearer and the one presenting the information. So that's why we're doing it. But there's a real problem with social media. And I think the main issue is it allows us to get cemented into our tribe. We can go on to X or we can go on to Facebook, and the algorithm is designed to feed us what we consistently want, what we want to hear. Now, it's going to base that on what we typically engage with. So if you're engaging with people you disagree with, you're going to be getting a lot of content that you despise also, that you feel the need to correct all the time. Or alternatively, if you just engage with things that you agree with, then you're going to be getting an echo chamber, things that are always reinforcing your preconceived ideas. And it's not really designed to be a healthy space for dialogue and learning. One of the ways that I personally use the social media platforms is principled engagement. I'm not using it to form how I think about the world or about politics or religion, but I am using it to engage with others who might disagree with me. And I am using it to then proclaim things that others may agree with. And I'm using it for both of those reasons. But it's not what I'm going to base my ideas upon. The things that I'm coming across on X or on Facebook or Substack are not necessarily going to be what I base my ideas on. There might be some good resources. You might come across thought patterns that you weren't aware of, and you might be able to stay up to date on things a little bit easier that way. But there's a real danger here where if you're just allowing yourself to base your thoughts and ideas and your attitudes and your spirit on the kinds of things that are present on social media, then what'll happen is you will start to mirror those things that you're consuming. You'll start to be affected by these things. And I think we have to be really careful about that. If the social media feed is causing you to start thinking about your neighbors and your brothers and sisters in the Lord, particularly those who are of the same household as you, as enemies, or as people who are working against the gospel in the community, then we might have to rethink our priorities. When we have so much in common with someone, and yet because we disagree on one thing that maybe doesn't even affect a whole lot of our day-to-day, we're going to allow that to cause division or a rift in our relationship. I think we have to think really carefully about that. We really ought not let social media and the tribes that are very shrill on social media affect our spirit so much that the people who are in our daily sphere, who we have an influence on and who influence us and who our lives are actually affecting, we shouldn't allow the social media to cause us to be black-pilled towards them, right? And one of the ways that this happens is by means of clips. People will take a clip of an interview and they'll share it, and then they'll write a blurb that frames it. And this has been used on both sides of every argument that has ever existed, really. It's called propaganda. They will use something out of context, they'll frame it a particular way, and they'll send it out there, and all that it does is reinforces the preconceived ideas that someone has towards that person or the thing that they're saying. And it's really not a good thing. The most recent one that I saw and I was responding to, which has then raised questions, which is why I'm then doing this video, was a clip that was taken of Ben Shapiro. So let me pull that up for you, and we'll take a look at this. Here's the clip. Nick Fuentes has shared this clip from Ben Shapiro's interview with Trigonometry. And this is what it says.
If you're a young person and you can't afford to live here, then maybe you should not live here. I mean, that is a real thing. I know that we've now grown up in a society that says that you deserve to live where you grew up. But the reality is that the history of America is almost literally the opposite of that. The history of America is you go to a place where there is opportunity. And if the opportunities are limited here and they're not changing, then you really should try to think about other places where you have better opportunities.
And so, the way that this is being framed is that Ben Shapiro is saying that you, as an American, do not have a right to live in America, and that you might need to move, because the system is the way that it is. And obviously, Ben's not saying anything about changing the system or anything like that, which is just bogus. So, one of the hosts of that podcast, Trigonometry, posted this. The deliberate misrepresentation of what Ben said on our show is just one more example of how much of a sewer X has unfortunately become. And this is what Ben Shapiro was saying. Take a listen.
Affordability is not like Beetlejuice, where if you just say it over and over, it suddenly arrives. You actually have to pursue policies that are likely to alleviate an affordability problem. But if your solution is always give me more power, and it does seem like that is the solution of the day from both sides, actually, then you're likely to just continue penduluming one side to the other, because people don't want to learn the actual lesson, which is if you actually want affordability, then either you have to change policies or change locations. Those are really the only two things.
He says more, and he explains, he unpacks that a little bit even more. But the idea here is that he says you either change policy or change locations. Those are the only two options that you have. If you are in a place that is not an ideal environment for the goals that you have for your life, you have options. You can seek to change the system so that things can become more affordable, or so that you can get the things that you need, or you can move somewhere where those things are already in place. Those are the things that you can do, as opposed to what tends to be the happening in modern day politics, which is if you vote for me, I can make everything happen for you that is not happening for you now. The system is against you, and if you vote for me and you give me the power to do it, I will change the system so that you will get everything that you want. That's what he's critiquing here. But Fuentes here is using it as a... he took out of context Ben Shapiro saying that you might need to move in order to get yourself into a position where you can actually have the opportunities that you want. He took that out of context to suggest that Ben Shapiro doesn't care about his land. He doesn't think that people in America should think about their place and value their place. And this he's presenting as evidence of that, which is just a completely taken out of context. Ben Shapiro is not talking about place. He's not talking about property ownership. He's not talking about generational wealth or building a community that where you have been for generations. He's not talking about any of that stuff. He's simply critiquing the idea in modern day politics. And he even says in this episode, Ben Shapiro says, we've raised an entire generation of people to think that if they're not achieving their goals, if they're not getting the things that they want or they need, that this is a problem of systems. It's not a problem that they can go and solve. And so this is what I was responding to in a lot of my X feed over the last few days, trying to demonstrate to people that if they're critiquing Ben Shapiro, because I was seeing a lot of conservative Christian leaders that were sharing this clip, this same clip that Nick Fuentes shared. They were sharing this clip and they were saying things like, does he think this way about Israel? Or this is why the conservative movement is going to die. This is not going to appeal to young people. And if you understand what they're saying, if they're critiquing what Ben Shapiro is actually saying, then what those conservative leaders are saying by sharing this clip with that framing is that the way to win young people or the way to establish the conservative movement in the vein that we want is to promise things to the people that think that they have them, that they need them. So if you don't have something, just vote for us and we'll give it to you. That is a leftist socialist idea. And so these conservative leaders are resharing something that is actually in line with a socialist political theory. Now, and I'm not critiquing either side when I'm saying this. There was another example just today of somebody who took Tucker Carlson out of context and did the same thing, and I critiqued that also. And then thankfully the author of that deleted the video. That's how it should be. We need to be disciplined about what we're seeing on social media and how we're engaging with it, and we need to be very careful that the things we're engaging with are honestly presented, and that we're not basing our opinions about Ben Shapiro or Tucker Carlson on the latest clip that's making its way around the internet. Most of the things that people see with all of the most popular commentators today, and so we just list them: Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, and any of these guys, most of the content that I think the majority of us engage with those people are clips. And so we don't know if they're honest or not. It's best if you are unsure to go to the source and see the clips that the people that are involved in the video are sharing, because they're going to share things that are in context of their own video. Which is why if you're looking to engage with something or just figure out whether it's being honestly presented, just go to the source and see if you can figure it out from there before you engage with it. Yes, it takes more work, it takes more time, but do it. I think that's a necessary part of principled social media engagement, so that you're not falling prey to this tribalism that people are using these sources for. Now, last thing I want to talk about, and that is liberalism and post-liberalism. Now, I'm not an expert on these things, and I know somebody who is, and I'm looking forward to having him on the show again in the near future so that we can discuss some of these things. But I just want to give you my personal analysis of the fracture that's currently happening in the conservative movement and why there is some infighting. So I'm going to leave my screen up so that we can talk about this. I'm using the AI Perplexity, and it's drawing from, you can see Wikipedia as well as Encyclopedia Britannica, a few other things. And I asked it to define liberalism. And so you can read it here. Liberalism is a political and moral philosophy that centers on the rights and freedoms of the individual, emphasizing liberty, equality before the law, consent of the governed, and the protection of private property. It is rooted in the belief that people should be free from arbitrary authority and should be able to pursue their own interests and happiness, with the government's primary role being to safeguard these individual rights. That's classic liberalism. That's the system that America is founded upon. And that, I would say, is the camp that's embodied by people like Ben Shapiro and the majority of the people on the Daily Wire. These groups are liberal, not in the sense that you're thinking, not leftist, not left wing, not liberal in that sense. those people tend to be the face of it only because the emphasis of liberalism, as you see here, is rooted on individual liberty. It's on individual liberty. And when that is taken so far to an extreme, you end up with the transgender movement. Because now I'm free to express whatever I want, and you have to allow my freedom. And if you suppress my freedom, then you are suppressing my rights as an individual. And that's why the left, they're called liberals. Okay? But the conservatives are also working within this liberal framework. And where people draw the line is really what's being debated. And I'm not going to get into the finer points here, and that's going to be for the conversation we have with our more studied guest on these matters. But the Ben Shapiro camp, I would say, is squarely in the liberal framework. They're focused on individual rights, private property, a limited government. Well, so now look at this. This is post-liberalism. Post-liberalism. So I'll read this. Post-liberalism is a political philosophy that critiques and moves beyond the core tenets of liberalism, particularly its emphasis on individual autonomy, market freedom, and state neutrality. Post-liberals argue that liberalism, in both its economic and social forms, undermines social cohesion, erodes family and community, and fails to foster the common good or true human flourishing. Instead, post-liberalism emphasizes the role of social and cultural contexts, traditions, and communal bonds in shaping individuals and maintaining a healthy society. Now, I just want you to look at the first core feature it lists there. Post-liberalism seeks to replace the value-neutral state with one that actively promotes shared moral and cultural values, often rooted in religious, traditionalist, or nationalist frameworks. Now, I have thoughts about all of this. I'm not going to share them right now. I just want to point out more of an analysis. This is where the fracture point is happening. And you have the people that are framing the Ben Shapiro in that clip in a particular manner are saying that he is eroding family and community. He's not fostering the common good or true human flourishing. And he's undermining social cohesion, all the things that here are defined post-liberalism. That's where they're critiquing him. Whereas Ben Shapiro would argue that the goal would be to limit government. We need to absolutely limit the things that the government is doing. We need to make it an open system with limited government so that people, the cream of the crop, can pursue excellence, and everybody has the right to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, to pursue happiness. All that we're trying to do is limit what the government is doing, and we're trying to leave the system open. Whereas the post-liberal, they're trying to establish a state that is actually emphasizing a particular side. They're emphasizing a particular side. And of course, most of the people that are in this vein want a Christian society. I would be in this camp. I'm not saying I'm post-liberal necessarily, not going there yet. But if I was going to choose a moral philosophy for a society, of course it would be Christian. I'm a Christian pastor. That's what I would want. But be careful with how you're engaging with these things online, and know that this, I think, is where the fracture line is happening. People are criticizing Ben Shapiro for being liberal, and then there's this, and they're doing that from the post-liberal standpoint, where they are looking for a more top-to-bottom, I'm not going to use the word coercive, but a more active role of the state in society in promoting a shared moral and cultural value, as it says. That's what that side is seeking to promote, a shared moral and cultural value, and they want it to be rooted in Christianity, as opposed to the classic liberalism, which is mainly focused on individuals, and it's focused on how those individuals express themselves is not going to be in the discussion. It's just focused on retaining the rights of those individuals. And so libertarianism would be very much in the same vein here, but those are all the finer points that we can discuss at a later time with my friend who is more versed on these things and can give us some guidance. And so the last thing I want to mention here is I'm going to encourage us all, myself included, to focus on the ordinary things that we have direct control over. This would be your diet, your sleep patterns, your exercise, those directly in your individual sphere, those things you have direct control over. And those are purely physiological things, okay? Just physical health. But then on the other side of that, we have worship patterns. What are your patterns of worship? Do you have time set aside to worship God and to commune with God and His Word? I do. Those things are not mutually exclusive, but I think it's important to have a time where you're simply worshiping the Lord, and then there are other times where you are trying to study to show yourself approved unto God, a workman that doesn't need to be ashamed, because you're rightly dividing His Word. I think that we really ought to think about how we're framing those things and whether we are doing them. Are you worshiping the Lord? How are you doing with your job? Do you have a job? Are you being faithful? Are you doing your job with excellence? That's something directly in your control. How about your family? Are you maintaining good relationships with your family? Do you have good relationships with your children, with your spouse, with your parents, with your siblings? How are the relationships in your life? These are things all within your direct control, and every one of those can take up all of your time. So the fact that we have space created for social media, and where these people who have nothing to do with our immediate life are able to affect us so greatly, and we don't have, when we're not taking good control of these other things, a lot of times, that's a problem. Let's reprioritize. Let's restructure. This is how we are actually going to affect society for and with the gospel, by taking control of our own life, the things that we have within our power to do. You can worship the Lord. You can do excellent work in your job. You can maintain a healthy family. You can eat healthily. You can sleep well. You can exercise. These are all things that you have the power to do. So get busy. Let's do them, and let's try to rethink how we're allowing social media and those spaces to affect us and our thinking, so that we can be more effective for Christ and His kingdom. Now, what's coming up here? The next interview, I've already done it. It's with Dr. David Erb. He's the one who wrote the Psalms that many of us love and sing, psalm settings that are in the Cantus Christi, which is the songbook that we use. And we just had a great conversation at the Fight Laugh Feast conference about building singing communities and some of the things that we can think about and focus on. Very excellent conversation. That's going to be posted the second Monday in December. The episode for today is already, or for this month, is already posted, and that was the live interview we did with Doug Wilson at our All Hallows Festival. It was a great time that we had during that, and a very helpful conversation with him. He had some insightful things to say, so if you haven't watched that, go ahead and check that out. And always, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week and month, and we'll see you soon. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Buffalo Reformed podcast.